Welcome to the table this afternoon, folks.
Welcome to the table.
Genesis 13, Abram and Lot separate. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together, for their possessions were so great that they couldn't dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the land, if you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you." So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Not a whole lot in that chapter, but yeah, there's a bit in the chapter. So, the expository goes into a bit of an overview here. And it says that the Lord had promised to provide Abram with an heir. But before that can happen, several potential heir substitutes have to be eliminated from possible consideration. Abram's nephew Lot is one of these. He's traveled with Abram from Haran after the death of his own father and prospered alongside Abram as an immediate example of the promises of Genesis 12:3 working its way out. As long as Lot stays with Abram, his fortunes are assured. Remember, we read that in the last chapter, that everything to do with Abram was going to be blessed. Yet in this chapter, Lot makes the catastrophic decision to part from Abram and strike out on his own, choosing what seems like the best location to prosper, even though it is outside the land promised to Abram, and means separating from the presence of the one whom God's blessing rests. He doesn't know, though he will discover later, that the inhabitants of the area he has chosen are wicked in the eyes of the Lord. The land that looks so good to his eyes turns out to be anything but the best option. So it's going to go on here. Go ahead.
I'm thinking that it wasn't so much, not sure how to explain it. Lot's heart is corrupt from the beginning.
Right.
Because he's like, this is the best land. That's the land I want.
Yeah, what my eyes see, this is what I want.
He's already fell off the wagon in this decision. His herdsmen fell off the wagon already by arguing amongst themselves.
Right, arguing with Abrams.
Yeah, the herdsmen against the herdsmen, their peoples,
right,
are clashing. And instead of working on why their people are clashing,
let's just separate. Well, so the Life Application Guide says, so verses 1 and 2, in Abram's day, sheep and cattle owners could acquire great wealth. Abram's wealth included not only silver and gold, but also livestock. These animals were a valuable commodity for clothing, food, tent material, and sacrifices. They were often traded for other goods and services. Abram was able to watch his wealth grow and multiply daily because the livestock would multiply. And then it goes on to say for verses 5 through 9 that facing a potential conflict with his nephew Lot, Abram took the initiative in settling the dispute. He gave Lot first choice, even though Abram, being older, had the right to choose first. Abram also showed a willingness to risk being cheated. Abram's example shows us how to respond to difficult family situations. 1, take the initiative in resolving conflicts. And 2, let others have first choice, even if that means not getting what we want. And 3, put family peace above personal desires. That's what the Life Application Guide says. Thank you.
You went way over yonder.
Yeah,
there.
we're not going to worry about it.
Okay.
So the expository goes on. It was quite interesting here. To resolve the conflict, Abram makes a remarkable offer. Although he's the senior member of the alliance and the one to whom God has promised the entire land, he will cede part of the land to Lot. And what is more, Lot can choose for himself which part of the land he desires, either the right or the left, that is north or south, as they look eastward over the plain of the Jordan. Abram proposes this division in order to avoid strife. He says, for we are brothers, we are men, we are kinsmen. A striking description given the frequently unbrotherly actions of literal brothers elsewhere in Genesis. It's also striking that the word strife is the same word used elsewhere for Israel's incessant complaining against the Lord in the wilderness, which suggests an ungrateful attitude on Lot's part. Here's where I thought it was interesting. It says, many Westerners misunderstand this offer and fail to see the offensiveness of Lot's response. It is customary in negotiation in many parts of the world for something to be offered as a gift that politeness demands the recipient to decline. An example of this kind of negotiation is seen in Genesis 23, where Ephraim the Hittite appears to offer to give Abram the burial site he's requested before a purchase price of 400 shekels of silver is finally negotiated. Ephraim would have been shocked and offended if Abraham had accepted the land as a gift. So too here, readers from non-Western countries often recognize the inappropriateness of Lot's eager acceptance of Abram's offer. As a younger family member, he should politely refuse the offer and either insist on staying together or insist that Abram make the first choice as the older one in the relationship. But even more profoundly, since God's blessing rests upon those who honor Abram, Lot should insist on remaining with Abram on those grounds alone. You would think if this is where your blessing is, this is where you're going to stay. He's prospered alongside Abram already, and surely some arrangement could be found that could enable them to live together in harmony, even if it limited their potential for wealth and possessions. Yet Lot's decision-making is not driven by such spiritual considerations. Instead, he lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well-watered everywhere. As noted earlier, intermittent rainfall is common cause of famine in Israel. As Eve did in the garden and the sons of God did prior to the flood, Lot sees something attractive and pursues it with similarly catastrophic results. After the Lord's destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, as we're going to see in the next chapter, the land is no longer such an attractive place to settle.
Are you seeing Jesus on this story yet?
Well, and I think we go to the
I'll put it up
the
there.
lust of the eyes. What you see there, that's what I see that and I want that. That looks good. Just
But
like he
you
said.
have an individual who turns his back on his blessing and walks away. And then later we're going to find out that the blessing loves him so much that he comes back and rescues him.
Ooh. Teaser for upcoming. If you don't know the story, it's pretty incredible. But yeah. I just find I find it incredible, and yet not. I say that. History just keeps repeating itself. Humans we want what we want what we see, what feels right. This is going to be good for me in the moment, but we don't necessarily look ahead because we want everything now.
Even if we looked ahead, I don't think we have the intelligence.
Right.
While we claim to be such an intelligent being, or my experience tells me that that's not accurate.
Right, yeah.
It's like right after they put the gorillas at the zoo.
Oh.
And I made that comment, you tell me which one the animal is.
Right.
You tell me who's civilized and who's uncivilized.
Right. Yeah. So, but Abram's given him choices. But in Genesis 12, as long as anybody was with Abram and good to Abram, then they were going to receive blessings. And Lot knows that. But they could have come up with something else. We'll rotate the lands around. Nope, they're going to separate. And Abram gives him first choice, and Lot knows culturally.
Well, especially in light of the cultural thing that I didn't know prior to tonight. Especially in light of that, Lot is the one probably being the issue.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if Abram would do this, then I'm only here. I'm not doing quite as good as Abram because Abram done this or that.
Right.
That human beat down that we like to do.
But, as a way to, this is family. This is his nephew. Okay, so let's keep peace in the family here. I'll give you choices. And the polite thing to do would have been for Lot to say, no, Abram, you make the decision, and I'll do whatever. Abram's the oldest.
I think even better than that, though, they would have been, no, I think we can work this out.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's going to work out all right, as God has planned. So, where do we stop at here? So, Lot lifted up his eyes, saw that the Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. And so Lot chooses the Jordan Valley, and he heads east. And we talked about that, I think, last time, too, that heading east isn't always good, it seems like.
I think we actually discussed heading east seems to be the wrong decision every time.
Seems to be the wrong decision every time. It just does. So, okay, so thus they're separated. And Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the valley and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. So verse 14, the Lord said to Abram, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, north, south, and east, and west, and for all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. We were up on I-70 this morning, and it's low end of the west end of the Flint Hills, kind of speak, but there's some nice rolling, and I love it when you roll up on, when you can see for miles. Kansas, we are such the flatlands, but I love it when you can see for miles, and that's where my brain just went to. You're on top of this hill, and you can see for miles, and God says, this is all yours. This, north to south to east to west, that's all going to be yours. How incredible.
And crazy to think of.
And crazy to think of.
I mean, even at that, as your screensaver pops up on your work computer over there, it's a mountain. The only mountain in there.
Right.
What could you see from the top of that mountain?
So, The expository goes on to explain for these verses 14 through 18 that the real winner in this division of the land is Abram, who continues in faith, trusting that God can provide for him within the land of promise.
Okay, so I got to disagree with that, the way that's phrased.
Trusting that God
Can.
Yeah, I totally.
We do that so much. God can heal me. No, God will heal you. God can do this. No, God will.
Yeah, and there's a difference.
You have to understand the will of our Father. And when we say He can, that is our vocalization of a lack of faith.
I just got deep quick.
I'm sorry. No,
you're not. So in return, he receives a renewed blessing from the Lord. The one who refuses to live by sight is now told to lift up his eyes and look in all directions, north, south, east, and west. Instead of limiting himself to the land on the left or the right, or even the apparently best of the land, all the land that he can see is to be his, and his offspring will become as numerous as the dust of the earth. This represents a substantial expansion of the Lord's promise to Abram back in chapter 12, verse 7, which merely mentioned offspring and land. Now, even though he separated himself from the last remaining member of his father's house, he is told that his offspring will be as numerable as the dust of the earth, and that his offspring will possess the whole land forever. The whole land. For this promise to be fulfilled, God will have to give him an heir and a family line. In contrast to Lot, who settles down quickly with the inhabitants of Sodom, Abram continues his nomadic travels, walking to and fro throughout the land, exploring the goodness of God's gift to him. Abram will never receive the full ownership of that property while he lives here on earth. At the time of his death, all that Abram owns is a field containing a cave with 2 small burial plots for himself and his wife. This is significant in Hebron, where he ends this chapter. If Abram's hope is in an earthly property, then it must be said that God fails him. As the Apostle Paul puts it, if in Christ we have hope in this life only, we are a people most to be pitied. Yet Abram is looking for a city with foundations which God himself will build, so his hopes are not disappointed. Abram's spiritual hopes are summed up by the conclusion in the chapter. After surveying the land and settling at Hebron in the center of Judah, Abram builds an altar there to the Lord. In this way, the entire section is bracketed by worship, the appropriate response of faith to God's promises. To borrow from the language of a later chapter, Abram believed the Lord and he counted it to him as righteousness.
And there's where you see Christ.
Yes. So it says, Lot chooses with his eyes and takes the apparently easy prosperity offered to him in the fertile Jordan Valley next to Sodom and Gomorrah. From a worldly perspective, this seems the sensible choice, but it's a decision Lot will live to regret. Turning his back on the land of promise also means turning his back on the one in whom blessing resides, Abram, and ultimately Abram's offspring, Jesus Christ. In a similar encounter, the devil takes Jesus up onto a very high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor, promising to give them all to Jesus if he would just bow down and worship him. That's Matthew 4.
That's where we need to catch a real
comparison.
quick understanding. The devil can't take him up on the mountaintop and offer him everything unless he has control of everything. And that's where you hear me say, the God, little g, of this world. Because in the Garden of Eden, Adam gave Satan everything when he sinned.
Right. He basically signed a contract.
No, he signed a contract. He gave the same way we do, unwittingly. The Bible tells us we perish for lack of knowledge. We come into union with something, and it don't matter what it is. If it's worldly, it's going to fall under the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, or the pride of life.
Right.
That's what the world is. the lures of the enemy.
Yeah, lures. That was the word. Yes.
Yes, the
Yes.
lures of the enemy, the pride of life, the lust of the eyes, and the lust of the flesh. This is what we see here with Lot. There's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and apparently the pride, because he should have turned the offer down. Would have been the honorable thing to do.
The honorable thing to do, yes.
But his pride got in the way, and he seen that it was good. And so much of the time as I start tearing stuff apart, I see that generally all three lures are used.
Right.
It's the flesh and the eyes, and then the pride says, I want that.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And we give into it, and that is the signing of the contract. You didn't put your indelible ink on a piece of paper, but you signed a contract in the spirit world.
You have agreed
Yep.
with the adversary.
Yep.
And when you come into agreement, that's an open door. Influence can move through that open door.
Yeah. So as Abraham's offspring and heir, Jesus will indeed inherit all the kingdoms of this world as the Father's gift, but only by following the painful pathway of faithful suffering all the way to the cross. Whatever the cost, Jesus is committed to a life of worship and trust in the Heavenly Father for the sake of the joy set before him, knowing that his inheritance is secure. As a result, we're called to turn our backs on the pathway of worldly compromise, even when it promises a life of ease and security. As Lot discovers to his cost, even in this world, compromise does not always pay, and in the light of eternity, it is a foolhardy bargain. Far better to step out in faith, believing God, and trusting him to deliver the good things he has promised us in Christ, even though it means following Christ along the road of suffering and trials.
And I think in there, I hear so much of, hello, Karina, so much of the gospel being, if you follow God, everything's going to be unicorns and rainbows. He's going to make your life sweet. It's rosy. It's
right.
The world is going to happen.
Right.
The only thing that changes when we turn our sights on God is our reaction to what's happening, but our the way we see it.
Oh, absolutely.
Offense, when you turn your sight to God, when offense comes, you understand that offense is against your flesh. It's not against your spirit. Actually, it probably is against your spirit more than your flesh, but because of your spirit, you can walk through it, because when Christ was up on the cross, one of the last things he said was, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." We could grasp what happened right there.
Right.
We could wrap our brains around that. These people spit on him. They slapped him. They cussed him. Stuffed the crown of thorns on him. Stripped him naked. You name it. Christ was afflicted in every way in the few hours leading up to the cross. And I can imagine with tears in his voice, "Forgive them, Father."
Right.
Take pity on them because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And Henry has talked about this too, how we don't, just like Eve and the fruit looked appealing, we don't look into the consequences out of that. We've been told no. So just leaving no at no, let your yes be yes, and let your no be no. Nope, I gotta do it. I gotta do it on my own. And here
because part of that lie was that you'll become just like God.
Right.
So he's put into Eve's mind that God's holding something back from you. When in reality, we're holding everything godly back from us. We are.
Yes.
When we surrender then the floodgates of everything that heaven promises comes forward.
Oof. Yeah.
But it's our rebellious nature, and no, I like the looks of that.
Right. And I want it now. I don't want to wait for it.
There's a lot of that goes, and that would lean more towards just having faith.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
a lot of times, when praying for somebody and it don't happen right away, I've heard the question many times, why did God not hear my prayer? And my real only response is, it's because of your lack of faith, which they don't see it as a lack of faith. They see a prayer not coming true.
Right.
But just because you prayed don't mean it happens right then. So your faith may be tested for years as such with Abram.
Right.
Your descendants will be as many as the sand. Abram never really got to see that crazy. 100 years old.
But what miraculous stuff that at 100 years old, him and his wife, who have waited roughly 25 years from the time they're 75 years old, and the promise comes forth.
After 25 years. But Abram, trying to use the right name at the right time.
Yep, his name.
Abram remained faithful through that.
You know, we've said it all along, from the time that you say, okay, God, it's yours, I surrender. We would say a lot of times when you're new to the faith, the attacks are going to come.
The attacks already come, but we're reacting to them in a different fashion. We have not learned to face the fire yet. So when the attacks come, the longer we respond like a fleshly person, it's the only way I really know.
Right.
Your carnal, as long as your carnal nature controls the situation, you'll continue to revisit that situation until your spirit takes over. And it's not that the situation ever stops. It's just that it becomes a different experience for you because you're living it through the spirit instead of through the carnal body.
That's a pretty good word right there. Yeah. Can you scoot up? I feel like I'm looking backwards a little.
Well, that's... No, I can't scoot nowhere.
Okay.
My wheels don't roll with my
feel like I'm looking
large
backwards.
framed body in this chair.
Like I said, bit of a short chapter, but he's coming back. So we start the chapter with him building an altar and everything that he's got. And then at the end of the chapter, he's come back to the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. It's about that constant prayer and worship